Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video I am going to be giving you my thoughts on The Last of Us 2. Now obviously this will function something of a review, where I'm going to review different aspects of the game, and then I'm going to give each one a score out of 10 based on my personal opinions only, and then I'm going to give it an overall score out of 10 as well. Now again, I'd just like to stress a couple of things. This is my own personal opinions only. You don't have to accept them at all. It's totally down to you. And also, obviously, there will be spoilers in this video. The first part of the video won't contain any spoilers for the story. I'll let you know when that is coming up so that you can either choose to keep watching or turn off the video depending on whether you finished the game yet or not. So I'm going to split this video into 3 different sections. So I'm going to review the graphics and audio is the first, and then the gameplay and the combat as the second part, and then finally the story / plot of the game. And the third part, the final bit, will contain the spoilers, so I will let you know when I get onto that, and I will put a timestamp in the description for the spoilers section as well as the other 2 sections as well. So, heading on right into this then, we're starting off with the graphics and the audio. Now, I think that the graphics and the audio are the thing that makes this game shine. And it's so important, I think, to start off with a positive. I mean, playing through this game, there were some fantastic moments where the visuals and the audio just really shone through. You know, when you're in a really tense situation and you're going up against infected and human enemies, you know, being able to view it in HD, really just made the game that little bit better. You know, and I have never played a game like this, where you just feel so immersed in the world around you. You know, each area is built up, with so much detail, each environment. And, one particular thing I liked, was how each area, presented a new challenge, like how to get to the next area. And, a lot of times you felt a lot of gratification about finding your way to the next point in the game. And I think there's some fantastic design points in this game. The light contrast, the difference, in the colour contrasts, just excellent all round. The audio, the weather, the characters, they all had a distinctive tone. You could really feel like you were part of the game. And it was quite evident to me that they'd taken a lot of time in considering the environment. And playing the game through 25 years into an apocalypse, they made it feel believable that the environment would indeed look like this. Even things I noticed in one of the very first scenes, where the clock on the next to the bedside table would change the time, and all these little details that you wouldn't necessarily notice, maybe 3 to 4 times of playing the game. And I think things like that really do make the game shine. So, in terms of the overall effect of the game, the feel of it, the intensity, in terms of the graphics and the audio, I mean, I have to give it 10 out of 10. I mean, because for me, it was pretty much perfect. I mean, the way you interact with the environment, throwing ropes, throwing bottles, that sort of thing, it all felt very smooth, very as it should be, and I really, really liked that. So that was definitely a positive for this game. So yes, 10 out of 10 would be my verdict on that. Okay, so moving on to the second part of the review, which is the gameplay and combat specifically. Now, I knew from before playing this game that they were going for a very melee focused combat style in this game. Now, as many of you know, melee is one of my favourite things in games to explore, and I love that aspect of any game. And I mean, this game was no exception. The melee combat in this game was phenomenal. It was very, very believable. And the amount of different melee weapons you got to choose from was excellent. I really enjoyed using Ellie's switchblade. That was fantastic. I thought it was a great concept, and it felt like a personal perk of the character that you were playing as, that she would have a blade that she has for personal use. So, that was excellent. I could not fault the melee combat, and what they were going for was just so, it felt so right. In an environment where bullets are scarce and supplies are scarce, then, you have to kill any way you can. So, that definitely felt like they did that right. Now, on to the other aspects of the combat, such as particularly the way the AI respond to you. Now, on this point, I thought, well, to be honest, I was a little disappointed, particularly because they were focusing on making each of the AI characters feel more personal. So like they would call out the name of their friend that was just killed or something. Now, all that's great and everything, but for me the AI just didn't feel that responsive. Like a lot of times I would be right next to somebody and, they wouldn't see me. The infected were okay. They were reasonably good at responding, but the human NPCs, I mean, I didn't feel like they had that responsive time that they should have had. And for me, that really let the game down, because I didn't feel immersed in the combat at all. And I found a lot of it you could just skip if you wanted to. Like a lot of the infected, you could literally just run past. Now that brings me nicely on to another point as well. The infected, they made it sound like when the game was released or when the game was teased that they had these new infected types and that everything was going to be really much more challenging and everything. Now, yes, they did have these shamblers as a new infected, and I mean, they were okay, I guess. They weren't particularly challenging. It's kind of the same with the dogs as well. The dogs are a new combat enemy, and they didn't really present a challenge at all. If I'm being totally honest, I was a little disappointed. The guns for me felt really clanky. They didn't feel smooth at all. I mean, the bullets kind of felt like, a lot of times they didn't do a lot of damage. I just, to be honest, I felt like, yes, I know you had to upgrade things, and that does make a lot of sense, but for me, I just felt like a lot of the stuff in the first game was really a lot smoother when it came to the weapons. And in terms of the weapons that we got, they were okay, but I kind of felt like they were a rehash of a lot of the weapons that we got in the first game, and then they just gave them generic names, like bolt-action rifle and semi-auto rifle. There wasn't any actual real names for these weapons except for the function that they performed. And, to me that felt a little bit shallow, perhaps. I don't know. I think the crafting in this game was improved. It was evident that they'd taken a lot of the crafting mechanics from the first game and, made them into something in this game, being able to craft ammo and everything as an extra. But again, I felt like, a lot of the stuff that we saw in the first game was in this game as well, but it didn't feel like it was executed as well. And for me, that was really difficult to take, because I think they had a long time to develop this game and refine it and everything like that. And, you know, some aspects of it really just fell short of the mark for me, combat-wise. So for me, the combat gets a 6 out of 10. Because I felt like the melee combat was excellent, again, as I said, you know, and that for me really elevated the gameplay, and it really did encourage me to go for melee weapon kills. But unfortunately, the rest of it was a little bit below the mark, so that was a shame. Okay, so that brings me on to the third and final aspect of the game. And just a reminder, this will contain spoilers, so please be aware of that, and please click off the video now if you don't want to know about the spoilers as of yet. So, let me start off with the characters. So, obviously we got to play as Ellie for some of the game, and then we got to play as Abby for the other part of the game. You know, and then there was a lot of characters interspersed with the story: Tommy, Joel, Dina, Jesse, you know, many of the other characters that were on the WLF side. So, let me start off first of all with Joel's death. So for me, Joel's death was really uncharacteristic. I felt like it was poorly executed. I felt as if it was way too early in the story. I just, you know, I get that this game was supposed to be about revenge and everything, but for me, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel well planned. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't within Joel's character to be caught off guard in that manner. You know, I feel like the developers took a bit of a risk with this one, and, you know, unfortunately, in my opinion, and probably many other people's, it just didn't pay off. You know, for me, I felt like Joel did not get the recognition in this game and the hero's death that he so deserved. Now, that to me doesn't mean that I like Joel as a character. Like, I didn't like Joel in the first game as a character. I thought that he was very rash in his decision making. I thought he was very, you know, very quick to jump to conclusions. I mean, it was just, I don't know, his death just didn't feel right in any way. You know, it felt rushed. You know, the fact that him and Tommy were caught off guard so easily as well, after telling Ellie in the first game about, you know, never trusting anybody, it just felt so out of character. You know, I think that was what was the most disappointing for me. You know, so we have Joel's death at the beginning, and then the whole story is focused around getting revenge for Joel's death. So we get on to them playing as Ellie, and, you know, the story progresses. So you play 3 game days in Seattle as Ellie, and you get to the midpoint in the story, so to speak, and then suddenly you start playing as Abby. Now, I think, again, you know, this comes down to poor execution, because I just, you know, you spend all your time building up Ellie's, you know, resources, you go scavenging for supplies, you upgrade her weapons, you know, and then suddenly, halfway through the game, you start playing as the character that killed the main character from the first game, and, you know, for me that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't like it at first. Now, granted, I am of an unpopular opinion, where I actually grew to like Abby quite a lot. And I enjoyed playing as her part of the story, because for me, it was the only part of the game where this kind of PC agenda, as I might describe it, was not constantly shoved down one's throat. And I really liked that. You know, so for me, that was a relaxing change of pace, I suppose, from playing as Ellie, you know. And to be honest, this game really made me hate Ellie. Like, you know, I really wanted to like her as a character, but I just couldn't. You know, and I didn't feel like I could relate to Ellie in any way. You know, this whole relationship with Dina, and, you know, them starting a family together, and, this whole love triangle with Jesse, that was or wasn't at different points in the story. For me, it just kind of felt a bit forced, like, and then when they tried to parallel up the characters of Mel on Abby's side and Dina on Ellie's side being pregnant, I just felt like, what are the chances of two characters on opposing sides of the story both being pregnant? Again, I felt like it was one of these risks that the game developers took that for me just didn't pay off. I felt like it just didn't make any sense, and this kind of business with WLF and the Seraphites, the WLF I understand to be an offshoot of the Fireflies, I suppose, but for me it just kind of, it left it unanswered, like what happened to the Fireflies. There was one note during the story which said about the Fireflies disbanding, and like I get that after Marlene's death, it kind of makes sense. But for me, if I was looking at this game, the angle I might have taken was that Abby would have been Marlene's daughter, and she would have taken revenge on Joel for killing Marlene, or something like that, as opposed to the dad being the Firefly surgeon. Now, that was a nice link, I suppose, and it closed up one of the plot holes in this previous game. But I think, it would have felt much more believable had Abby been Marlene's daughter as opposed to the daughter of some surgeon that we play as or have contact with for 30 minutes and then suddenly never hear from again. I mean, it just felt like, I don't understand. And going back to, the Seraphites, I felt like the Seraphites were definitely more interesting than the Hunters, but I didn't feel like there was that much development there. We didn't really understand what they were about too much. They were just some arcane cult that followed a prophet or something, she will guide us or something of that nature. And it just kind of felt like they were another, faction just put into the game almost for lip service. It just, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. With regards to the WLF, and Abby and everything, I think, and also Ellie's gameplay, I think what would have been more, how do I put this, more kind of fluid, if you like, would have been if we'd have played as Ellie for one day, and then Abby for one day, and then vice versa, because, I felt like, because we knew the outcome of the fates, I should say, of like 90% of the characters halfway through the game, like, why would I bother connecting with any of the characters in the game when I already knew what their fates were? I mean, for me, it just felt totally wrong. Like Mel, Owen, basically all the people on Abby's side of the story just felt like total wastes of time because you already knew what the outcome of their path in the story was going to be. And so I just, and then this intertwined with all the flashbacks as well. Now, some of the flashbacks were really, really cool. Getting to see different scenes like at the aquarium with Ellie and Joel, for example. That was a really nice change of pace in the game and kind of made the characters feel a bit more human again. Just enjoying the little things like going to a museum and, birthdays and things like that. That was a lovely aspect. But, it just made the story feel so confusing and hard to follow, and then you forget about what's happened in the previous section because you're at a flashback for, say, 30 minutes or an hour. And for me it just felt so unnecessary, to have all those flashbacks in the game. So, now it brings me on to the ending of the game. Now, the ending for me was by far the most disappointing aspect of the game. I mean, you've gone through all this effort of taking revenge and, this whole story of killing hundreds of NPCs and all that sort of thing. You've gone through all this struggle with Ellie, killing off all of Abby's cronies and all that, only to have this big boss fight at the end with Ellie and Abby, and then all of a sudden, you know, it just ends and they just part ways almost. You know, Ellie's on the verge of killing Abby, and then, you know, suddenly it just, I don't know, I honestly felt like the ending, it left more questions than it gave answers. And I just felt so disappointed by the ending, to be honest. You know, we took the ending as being that potentially Ellie was going to start a family with Dina, you know, in this country farm somewhere. And then all of a sudden, Tommy arrives to get Ellie to get Ellie to take revenge on Abby. And, you know, she leaves all her family and her life behind to go on this revenge quest again for the second time in the same game. And it just, I don't know, it just felt all wrong. The whole ending just felt wrong, you know. I mean, not that I'd necessarily been satisfied, but I just kind of felt like the whole thing just didn't work. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. The whole story for me, you know, gets a 3 out of 10. I think because it just was not on par with the rest of the game. I'm sorry to say, you know. So my overall score for this game would be a 5 out of 10. Simply for the reason that the plot was just really subpar and disappointing, you know, and I felt like we waited such a long time for that, and what we got just didn't hit the mark for me at all. So thank you so much for watching. Obviously it's been quite a long video, so apologies for that, but there was a lot to cover, and to be honest, I don't feel like I really scratched the surface. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and what your thoughts about were about the game, and hopefully then we can look forward to the multiplayer. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and remember, keep your hands off me.